like and subscribe. NSFW. What's the most NSFW thing you saw go down at work? A mountain lion appearing in the parking lot, blocking the way into the office building. Definitely not safe to get out of your car and go into the building to work. Literally not safe to work. I work janitorial at a university and was on the early morning shift. It was normally pretty quiet, 4:30 AM, with few people around. One morning I went to get onto an elevator and there were two people having vigorous sex. There was that awkward moment of us staring at each other as the door stayed open for a few seconds and then closed again. I had a good laugh, then went about my work thinking little of it. Fast forward 3 years. I meet this girl and start dating her. After a few months we end up going on a camping trip and we were going to meet a few of her friends out there. When we arrive at the campsite, there was a second awkward moment as I recognized the couple from the elevator and they recognized me. When my GF went introduced us, the three of us almost simultaneously said we've met. When my GF asked when and how we met, we just burst out laughing and ended up telling the story. Small world. Not where I worked, but in the 1980s it was reported in the local alternative newspaper that a manager had responded to an employee getting very worked up during a busy holiday rush by taking him into the back, blowing him, and then saying, "All right now, calm down and get on with the job." Because they didn't name the business, except what they sold, every store that sold that good was swamped with applications. Guy at work occasionally used the machine shop on site to make pipe bombs. This was pre-9/11. I am a teacher. Our smart boards are linked to our computers, but you can freeze wires on the board, so the students can do the work and you can check emails, do registers, etc. One guy thought he had frozen the board and proceeded to sext his missus over email during a lesson. He was at least smart enough to use his personal email, but he was dumb enough to not check the board was actually frozen. Result was students photographing the rather scandalous emails and Snapchatting them to each other. I work on a different site, and within 2 hours it was all over my site as well. The guy no longer works for us. I had to mediate an intra-office issue where employee A refused to interact with employee B in any sense after they had a bad date. This wouldn't be a big deal, but it is healthcare and cooperation is necessary. Employee A is furious that employee B walked out in the middle of their date and said that he was humiliated just looking at her. Employee B basically agreed to be professional at work and admitted that she wouldn't have walked out of the date, except she was in shock. At this point, we are a little concerned that whatever shocked her might be a liability to us, drugs, a kiddie porn stash, etc. So we take them and talk to them separately. Employee A has no idea what we are talking about. Employee B wants to be discreet, but eventually tells us. Apparently, the date was going well, so they decided to skip the movie and go back to employee A's place after dinner. He pulls a "let me go get more comfortable" while employee B waits in the living room. Employee A comes out in head to toe adult baby clothes, diapers included, and hands her a strap-on. In actual baby talk voice, he told her what sex acts he wants her to do to him. His kinks were never discussed beforehand. Let me tell you, taking notes on that entire situation in a way that could be disseminated to the President of Human Resources was a task. I had a coworker that took massive amount of drugs on busy construction sites. To the point he would sway around and barely keep his feet. The company knew, but was so desperate for workers they turned a blind eye and never did anything about it. Company, cold nerd, keep anybody longer than a year, except this guy. Had many close calls on the sites and somehow never died. One day he just drove off a site in the middle of the day. The company trucks were GPS tracked, so they found him ordered in it in the shady part of town. Edit, he was very dead when they found him. When I said "ODID" in this context, I assumed I did not need to clarify. When I worked at a hotel, one of the housekeepers was known to hook up with guests from time to time. The head housekeeper caught her in the act once, when she was trying to inspect rooms. Edit, I regret to inform the people who commented asking which hotel, and all the people who mad at me asking, as well, but I don't think she still works there. That's just good customer servicing. I did not see it, but it was recorded. We have cameras. Two sets of kids, 15 to 16, decided to have sex in the front row of movie theater. At the same time, while the movie was running, with people in the rows above them. They were wondering what we should do about the footage. I said to leave it. Don't look and it will go away in 30 days. Some states have laws about deleting evidence of a crime, so I'll let the system take care of it automatically. The kids were shamed by police and parents. Police were caught, and so were the parents. The kids acted like it was no big deal. Gosh mom. You won't let us at home. What did you expect? I did not see the event, only the aftermath, but when the films in the mall where I worked was bought out / changing its sign to masses, a worker was electrocuted and died. At first, mall management tried to stay open, but the police forced them to close for the day. Possibly a rumor only, but I later heard that the film / masses manager had insisted that the electrician work the sign hot. Any electrician that agreed to work on that sign hot was a dead man walking anyway. Would have got in eventually. Electrical burns are insane. Just never do that ever. I was working second shift security in a pharma company and a line worker came put at the boss's office all disheveled. The boss had gone home already, so I kept watching, and two dudes came out of the office a few minutes later. One was still putting his pants back on. They were extremely surprised that the door to her office was on camera. Turns out one of the dudes had stolen a master key from a janitor's cart and had been using the manager's office as a bang pad. Guy came into work very late, back office for a bank, with two black eyes and completely beaten up. In front of everyone, and quite loudly, said it was his girlfriend, but you think I'm bad, you should see her. He was being serious too. Someone also caught him doing a line in the office toilet, before he started work that day too. I'll just assume it was Wells Fargo. Only thing I learned from this thread is that my job is either really boring, or I'm never in the right place at the right time. Be the change you want to see. I have worked at a country club for a long time and there is always scandalous going down. Housekeeper was. I'm the maintenance man in the laundry room. A member walked into the bathroom and witnessed a man giving another man a BJ. The beverage cart girl was flashing her new boob job to men for tips. The latest hot off the press story was two co-workers were having a threesome with a member and took pics on his phone. Wife found them, sent them to the GM. Two co-workers fired on the spot. Plenty more stories, but those are the top ones. Woman pulled up behind our building. We had on-site security and lots of cameras. She stops, gets out, drops her pants, and s behind the building. Security goes out to ask her WTF she's doing. She scoops her mess up with napkins and drives away. Our office was near a mall and an interstate highway. There were restaurants and fast food everywhere. There was no reason for her to do that behind our building. I used to work at a GameStop, and some kid crapped his pants, then let the evidence just fall out the bottom of his pants, because he didn't want to stop playing one of the demo games. We had a bathroom, and we were in a mall with public bathrooms all over the place. He had options. Watched a dude do donuts on a forklift, and get fired within about 30s as a super, was standing there watching it go down. When I was in the Navy the inspection sheet called for 4 donuts. To left to right, to ensure that, if the steering went out or anything, it would be in a sorta controlled environment. I got yelled at the first time, till I pulled up the sheet and people realized the last guy just never did the inspection. I used to work at a library and there was a homeless guy who came in every other day, and he used to drunkenly his pants while sitting on the upholstered chairs. It got to the point to where we were replacing the chairs, since the smell sunk in, and we ended up banning him for a year. If only there was some other form of seat that would freely allow urine to just flow away. perhaps made of porcelain or other similar and resilient material. I worked as a janitor at a hospital. There was a private restroom on the second floor. On multiple days, someone positioned themselves above the toilet and took a dump all over it. It turned out to be a janitor on second shift. Edit, I worked third shift. I preferred this restroom except for the days when it was covered in poop. BTW, I only talked to that janitor one time. He said he had been there for 10 years and planned to retire from there. Now that's job security. Watched someone get burned/blow up. Night shift in the winter about 4 years ago. He needed to preheat a piece of steel, so he turns on the gas, but goes away for 15 to 30 seconds to find his flint striker, and comes back and makes the spark. Had third-degree burns on most of his body. Came back 3 months or so later with pics of all the blisters/scabs/all that nasty. Had a fire drill at work one night. Attendance was taken, and 2 people missing. Couple bosses went back in looking for them. Found them in a storage room having sex. Boss told them to finish up, have a good time, go home and don't bother coming back. Work it for a law firm. You'd be astounded how many times I remote into an attorney's laptop and he just has a straight up porn folder on the desktop. When I was a teenager, I put a folder on the family computer's hard drive labeled dirty pictures, because we had just got our first internet connection, and my brother and I were warned not to be looking up stuff we shouldn't. I went out and took pictures of any bare spots of dirt I could find, and put them on the computer. Now that sounds like an easy prank to you kids today with your USB cables and your smartphones in this future space year of 2021. But back in the dim pre-industrial dystopia, that was 1996, it was a little more difficult. I had to take the pictures with this miserable little 110 camera, https n wikipedia.org/wiki/110 film, and get the film developed, and pay the extra money to send the film off to be scanned onto a CD-ROM by Dark Ages Smiths using hammers and very tiny punches to strike the pits into the CD. After a 3-week wait, I'd go back to the store and get my CD and developed pictures. But Dad's reaction was worth it. Edit, I'm glad that I could do something as an idiot teenager that would bring joy to so many random strangers in the future. Edit 2, I keep getting asked why I didn't just Yahoo/webcrawler/Lickers/Altivista the pictures off the internet. I'll answer. It's worth mentioning that the internet has developed and been a thing for 30 years now. Everyone has the internet in their pocket, and now you get on your phone and look it up. You're looking back through 25 years of personal experience with the internet. But back then, to me, it was completely new. It didn't occur to me that I could just look up pictures of what I wanted. It didn't enter my mind at all, because why would it? I knew how to take pictures with a camera. I knew how to get the pictures put on a CD. I knew how to move files around from the CD to the hard drive. Nobody would have googled pictures of dirt, because Google didn't exist. It certainly wasn't a verb. Imagine you're living around 1880 in the US. You have just moved into a house with electricity for the first time. It's literally the first week you have lived in this house. Your entire life, when you needed light, you had to have a candle or a lantern. You walk into a dark room in your new house. If your first thought to hit the light switch? No, you fumble around for a candle and a match, because that's what you have always done. Then once you've done that a few times, you learn to reflexively hit the light switch. Of course, one of your children, who has lived with electricity their entire lives, wouldn't think to mess around with candles, because the light switch is *RIGHTTHERE*. I work for a medical device company. We have an on-site cadaver lab for testing. One day the lab freezer, where we keep human tissue samples, broke. The new one wasn't going to arrive for a few days. The lab tech wanted to move the samples to the freezer in the break room in the meantime. You know, where we keep food. His boss caught wind of it before he actually moved them and put a stop to it. When I used to work at In-N-Out Burger, the fry girl accidentally chopped off part of her finger using the potato slicer. The entire sink was filled with fries and blood, in which the tip of her finger was floating around. It was quite a spectacle. First day at a job, and out of nowhere an employee yells across the office at the boss, "We all know you're cheating on your wife with the secretary." The boss freaked out and started yelling at all of us that his personal life is none of our business. The secretary was crying, and they both left. I was supposed to be training with the boss that day, but because he was gone we all just went down the street to some Mexican restaurant and drank all day. Pretty cool gig, even if it was very short-lived. I worked for U-Haul about 11 years ago, and the location was behind a sketchy club that changed ownership constantly from lawsuits and I came in one Saturday to open, and my manager was late, so I was alone. I get inside, start pulling the displays out to the showroom and I hear a loud bang on the front door. Scared the out of me. I look over, and there's a naked girl out there crying and begging me to let her in. I grabbed a moving blanket to cover her, and called the cops. She was covered in her own and had dried blood all over her. Turns out, she got drugged at the club that night, and got gang *raped*. I apologize for using the word banged instead of raped. I certainly know the poor girl was raped and didn't consent, and left out there passed out. When she came to, she came running to the first place she saw, which was U-Haul. I worked at Mac's way back in the day, talking early zeros. One of the nighttime janitors was named Frankie. He was a Quebecer with a dirty sense of humor, so we got along well. One night shift, I was washing dishes in the back, while Frankie changed one of the grease traps. He slipped on the wet floor, and dropped the boiling grease all over himself. This was all directly in front of me, like some of the grease splattered on my tie vinyl work shoes, ruining them. It was edition. Never heard somebody scream like that in my life. Literally, hot grease all over him, head to toe. Because it was a grease burn, we had to take all of his clothes off, so that it didn't melt into his skin. Pretty sure the 911 operator told us to do this, but it may have been the quick thinking manager. Anyway, poor Frankie, covered in grease burns, cursing like a stripped down to his tighty whities, had to wait for some paramedics to arrive and treat him, and I ed off out there a little after midnight. He recovered, and eventually became the nighttime manager at a Walmart MC's. I used to see him all the time afterwards, and he seemed to have recovered well, no scars on his face. Anyway, edit. Just wanted to say that the manager that night, aka/Hamlin turn, and I did remember each other. It is buried in comments below. Coworkers on ecstasy, having sex on the prep table in the back at a Subway. We were open until 4 AM. There was one occasion where a coworker brought in speakers, black lights and strobes, and we basically had a rave. We made sandwiches with our shirts off that night for customers. Man, I have a lot of stories from that time. Edit. Okay, a bit more. My first night on the job there, my coworker had dropped ecstasy. She was lost with her fingers in the lettuce, swishing them around, and staring blankly at it. We made sandwiches around her. Lots of stories about sex. Once had a random customer I'd never met tell my coworker I was cute, so my coworker sent her around the back, and she jumped on me. Zero conversation. Just went at it in the back corner. Sex with coworkers in the back, in the bathroom, in the refrigerator. Drunk people getting subs for weed or flashing us. One of my favorites was the drunk guy who, while trying to order, thought there was a wall next to him. So he put his elbow up just like this. https://previews 123rf.com/images/feedow1706/feedow1706010/80,620,674 side view picture of a casual man leaning elbow on grey wall and looks at the camera. JPG leaned over and held the pose perfectly all the way to the ground. before he realized he was falling. There was a schizophrenic guy who would come in all the time and order, talking to the voices in his head all the while, but totally responsive to us, polite, friendly. I ran into him like a year after I stopped working there, halfway across the country, sitting next to me in a park. I look over at him as he's talking to himself, and my jaw just dropped. I don't know if he thought I was a hallucination or just someone weirded out by his talking to himself, but he barely glanced at me. I couldn't get a word out. I just sat there and looked at him for quite a while processing it, then walked away. I was closing one night and had lost the keys to my apartment, so after my shift I curled up on one of the shelves in the back, with a bag of pickle slices as a pillow, and slept for a few hours until the opener, my manager, came in. I woke up when the door opened and started to climb out of the shelf. Just as she came around the back with all the lights still off, and saw a strange form crawling out of the wall. She *FREAKED OUT*, screamed and just fell down into a heap on the ground. I felt pretty bad about that one, but we laughed about it later. Had one of the best bosses ever through this whole time, super chill, generous, calm, friendly. As long as we weren't operating at a loss, or getting her into trouble, everything was fine. She didn't care how much free food we ate, so long as we recorded it in the computer for inventory purposes. That job fed me through college. You've been visited by the ghost of a very important man. Pay your respects by liking and subscribing, and he'll grant you 3 weeks of good luck.